Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Are we awake today? I know it's sunny out. Everybody wishes we were outside because it's like one of the first nice days after rain and rain. Hope everybody had a nice weekend, but thank you for joining us here this morning. We have a very special opening guest speaker, so I'm going to ask Tasha to come up and do introductions, and then we will get started from there.
Hello, everyone. I want to introduce Rushni Vereen Penix, who works for the local Waterbury Public Health Department, and she is a recovery coach professional, and she's going to give you her story and services.
Wonderful. Yep.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. How are you? Happy Mother's Day. Okay. So once again, I am Rushni Vereen. I am a recovery coach professional, a recovery support specialist, and a CHW, community health worker. So some of you may know what a recovery coach professional is. That's an individual with lived experience, someone who is in recovery, and they assist other people who are struggling with substance use disorders. Recovery support specialist deals with more of the mental health piece of things. I got that through Advocacy Unlimited, and the RCP is through CCAR. Just by a show of hands, anybody know who CCAR is? Okay, so some of you do. So that's Connecticut, let me get it right, Connecticut Community Addiction Recovery. I may have said it backwards, but that's who I got my RCP through. And then CHW is a community health worker. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background about me, I do have a bachelor's in sociology, minor in African American studies, worked as a child protection social worker for 20 years, it was through a workers' comp injury that led to my personal lived experience and my recovery journey with addiction. So I just want to share a little bit of that with you before I go into other items. So, you know, being placed on the opioid Percocet for many years, that is how I became addicted. Okay, and addiction does a number on you. It does a number on your body. It does a number on your brain. It actually scrambles things, in addition to other substances that I was abusing at the time. So life began to fall apart for me, okay? And it affected many areas of my life, all right? And in 2019, I found myself without a job. Didn't know what I was going to do. And a good friend of mine told me years ago, Rush, I could see you as a recovery coach. She sits to the right of me. She actually was my first recovery coach, honestly. And that was the journey that led me to becoming an RCP. And I started at CCAR, and I started volunteering first. And then I later got a job with MCCA, the Waterbury branch, for about a year. And COVID hit us. And then, bam, I see something for an overdose response technician. And I'm like, okay, this sounds like me. And here I am today. So in my current role at the Waterbury Health Department, I am a overdose response technician. I am on a police radio with the Waterbury PD. I respond in real time to opioid overdoses, okay? And what I do is I try to connect the individual, which usually they've had been, Narcan has been used on them. I try to connect them to treatment if they want it. We live in a time where a lot of people don't want treatment. Some do, some don't. If they don't want the treatment, then how can I assist you in keeping you alive? And so I offer, many of you know it as harm reduction. So this is your Narcan, also known as naloxone. These are your xylazine and fentanyl testing strips, along with education, and then other supports that are available for you. What I've found is, being a woman with lived experience, a lot of times when you walk in, people are ashamed. They're embarrassed. They don't want to talk. They don't, you know, the stigma, you know, so when appropriate, individuals hear, oh, I'm someone with lived experience, I'm someone in recovery, you get the big, like the woosah, because individuals with substance use disorder, along with mental health, are constantly being judged. And I've felt that, you know, through my journey, and I still feel that a lot of times. And so I'm thankful for my lived experience so that I can help get people to that next step. So one of the things that I want to say is substance use disorder knows no color. It doesn't know socioeconomic status. It doesn't know finances. What it does do is it destroys and it kills, okay? And that's something I try to open up with when I do speak with people. It doesn't discriminate. It just destroys and it kills, okay? So I already went into a little bit about the shame, the stigma, the guilt, the embarrassment. One of the things that I want to share personally is that it took my personal recovery journey to help my family understand substance use disorder. So I come from a background where alcoholism is big. Some of you may know that or have that in your family or in your personal life or know of people, you know, but it wasn't something that was addressed, especially in the Black community. It's an unspoken thing. You just accepted it and you lived with it. But it actually took my journey for my family to understand, because they didn't know what to do. They knew I was an educated person. They knew I kind of knew the system because I'm a social work background and now I'm in this field, but they just didn't know what to do. So thankfully, they now know what to do when encountering situations with substance use disorder. We try to be very careful with our language now. We don't call people crack addicts. We don't call people addicts. We talk about substance use and polysubstance use. You know, again, individuals are still dealing with a lot of shame and stigma. So let's be careful with our words, okay? In 2022, I lost my youngest and only brother to crack laced with fentanyl, 32 years old, found on the side of a dumpster in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Unfortunately, as I had taught him many times, please have your naloxone with you, your Narcan with you. Taught him how to use it. Now, a person cannot use it on themselves. They can't. But we do encourage the buddy system so someone can use it on you if you need it. He didn't have it that day. And so we all know, well, most of us knows what happens. Your brain without oxygen, about 5 to 7 minutes, then your brain starts dying because of the lack of oxygen. So that was something that hit me kind of hard because I'm like, well, wow, here I am helping to save lives in the community and I couldn't do it for my own brother. So I dealt with some guilt around that, but at the end of the day, there was nothing more that I could do. However, I knew that there were other lives out there that I need to impact, that I need to encourage and to keep pushing forward, regardless. So that's what I do in my brother's memory, okay? How am I doing with time? One of the things that I wanted to address, because I know, I know some things about long-term care residential facilities, but what I wanted to add was a lot of the individuals in these places are what we call functioning users, okay? So these are people that have had a long time heroin addiction for years and years. And one of the things that I'm seeing, so I guess I didn't explain this part as an overdose response technician, but any call that comes in, because we're only Monday through Friday, we get the police reports. So we have to follow up. We have to follow up with these individuals. And I just lost my train of thought. I'll get back to it. So we have to follow up, and we get the police reports. And a lot of the reports that are coming in now, these are individuals that are in their 60s and 70s. When I started this position back in 2020. The majority of the ages were like ages 18 to 31, 32, but it's continuing to climb. So getting back to that original point that I was trying to make is a lot of people are long-term, they're functioning users. And what I'm finding is that people, they will go out on the street and look for something and don't know that it's laced. This is a different beast we're dealing with now. You know, stuff is not pure anymore. So people think they're getting one thing and they're getting something completely different, which is why we have fentanyl testing strips and xylazine testing strips. We want people to stay alive. And so that's what I'm finding. And I mean, It doesn't even matter now. They're getting older and older, and that's what we're finding. So I would like to transition into just some of the things that are available for people, okay? So again, fentanyl testing strips, xylazine testing strips. There's a lot of other substances mixed in. When I got on the job, fentanyl was our big monster. It's no longer our big monster anymore. Xylazine, if some of you know what xylazine is, it is an animal tranquilizer, something that's used to put elephants, tigers, animals, okay? It doesn't belong in our bodies. And unfortunately, because it is, it's an animal tranquilizer, naloxone doesn't use on it. So it makes it even more dangerous. When we're using naloxone on somebody, which usually will bring a person to within 2 to 3 to 5 minutes, well, if it's mixed with xylazine, then I have to see if your chest is even rising. Because yes, while the naloxone is working on the opioid, it's not working on the xylazine. And currently, there's nothing for that. All right, there's nothing for that other than to just wait until that person comes to. But again, we have testing products or whatever so that a person can use less of a substance or at least know what's in the substance that they're using. Some of the other common things, which I'm familiar with for people dealing with substance use disorder, is MAT, also known as medically assisted treatment. There's methadone. There's Suboxone. I was on Suboxone for 7 years. Actually, I just got off of it last year. And those first 3 to 4 years, I needed to be on it because I didn't trust myself, okay? But I just wanted to let you know that those are some of the things that are available, Vivitrol. And then I'm sure there's many other things now that people are using to help people get to that next step when battling substance use disorder. One of the many things that I do is I conduct Narcan trainings, and I speak on the importance of naloxone. And it is because of the naloxone saturation within the Waterbury community that many lives have been saved. Many lives have been saved, and a lot of the people that I see, they are they're chronic. They're chronic users and overdose more times than we can probably count on both hands. Okay. And they range, and they're all different age ranges. Some of the community resources is CCAR. They have what's called a recovery coach that will call you. So it's called telephone recovery support. This is usually an individual with lived experience that will make a call to you on a daily basis. They won't come out and necessarily see you, not unless you want to see them, but just to check on you. Another one is Aware Recovery. They actually go into the home and work with people. There are individuals like me, a recovery coach professional. I've done it for friends, family members, and the people that I serve in the Waterbury community. I will go sit with you and talk about you as an individual. Everyone's plan is not a cookie cutter plan. Some may do better with methadone versus somebody else that may do better with Suboxone. Somebody else may just do well with abstinence space. Then we have people that will abuse alcohol. You know, we have our MCCAs, places like that. So there are many different pathways to treatment, okay? So recovery coaches do exist. We do go out into facilities and things like that. So, you know, what I can pretty much leave you guys with is utilize us. We're there. We're here. We have 3 recovery coaches at the Waterbury Health Department. We are in the prevention unit on the 2nd floor. And the ORTs pretty much do the substance use part of things. We assist with getting people to treatment. And yes, we can assist with people's individual plans, okay? And then again, I did mention a few. There's many more than the several that I mentioned, but there's many other agencies that you can utilize, okay? And having a good support system is actually what helped me. I had a phenomenal support system. My pathway was outpatient treatment, but that worked for Rushney. That might not work for everybody else. Somebody else might need a long-term care facility for whatever their concerns or their issues are. So in closing, I want to thank you guys for having me. I hope that that was educational and informative. And please ask me questions if anyone has any questions, or do I have to wait on the questions? Okay, so who was first? Or,
Does every town have a person like you?
some do. I think you'd have to, I know we're the only health department, I think, in the state that has, ORTs. I'm not sure. You'd probably have to maybe call 211 info line and find out. I know there's certain towns, like for instance, New Britain, they have off-duty EMTs that volunteer their time after work as recovery coaches. So they may not be identical to what I do, but similar.
Would that be I saw people nodding when you were talking. Would it be helpful for us to see if we can get a list town by town of all of the resources and get it to you guys? And if your town doesn't have it, just hearing this, what I'm thinking is maybe we ask Waterbury for a model, and that maybe we can bring it to other towns and ask their police departments or their social service departments to work with us in order to put some services in place. Does that sound like a good idea? Yes. All right, Dan, I see Dan writing. Thank you, Dan.
I saw her.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you guys provide Narcan training?
Yes, and I do it all over the state. I've been doing it now for the Tunsis dental students, which is coming up in June. We just did the UConn students, their intro to health professions. So we go all over the state, and we conduct either myself or one of the prevention team. Oh, I'm sorry. Or one of the other prevention members. Oh, you would reach out to me, which I can give you my information, and just send me an email, and we'll take it from there.
I just wanted to clarify, if we needed services in Bridgeport, did we call 211?
So 211 might know, but I also, Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services is here, DMIS, so we might see what they have as far as a list, and maybe we can put something together town by town. 211 gets the information from the providers to feed it, and so maybe we also do a call out to the providers to make sure that 211 is updated with all the services that they provide.
And I do know that Bridgeport does have a C-car,
Hartford does too.
and Hartford, New Haven as well. Yes, sir.
You mentioned test strips. Can you walk us through the procedure? What do you do?
So it's pretty much like a dip stick. I'm sorry, and I may have some in my vehicle. And what you do is, say there's residue. And think of like a bottle cap, and say someone who uses heroin wants to test for fentanyl or test for xylazine. Now, they're two separate strips. You're gonna put a little bit of water in there. I don't have the exact measurement, which is on the testing strip, and you're gonna test the residue. If I'm not mistaken, please don't quote me, I wanna say one or two lines may be positive, and then like I think a negative line means negative. So it's literally like a dipstick.
So you take the substance.
Right, or the residue. Okay?
The
Yes.
resident will let you do that? Like if we have a resident that's doing heroin, I'm just trying to understand.
They can do it?
Resident before they do this drug and test it?
That's one of the ways that the resident can do it, is to test it in like a bottle cap, the residue. And like I said, it's a simple process with water, and you test to see if it has the substance you either want or don't want. There are people that are looking for those substances, but we don't want folks dying. So we will, not that they're necessarily gonna listen, but you do less of it, you broaden your chances for living.
And I,
Okay, like if we know this resident, we'll just be like, we know what you do, but we just want you to be safe. Do you mind if I just test this so you know what's going on? It's not gonna be like a conflict with residents or anything like that.
See, I don't know how your policies are, so.
So
Policy for the DPH and stuff, so.
yeah, we can't speak for DPH, but I would say if the person, in my opinion, if the person's using, I wouldn't want to touch anything. Making sure that they're educated by a recovery assistant on how to use things, that they have access to those things, and just reminding them that they have access to those things would be my personal approach. I don't know that I would touch anything or.
Right.
and this is a form of harm reduction. So this is a form of harm. So the resident, if the resident is going to use, then they're educating the resident on how to use safely. And so you're having the provider come in. No, you're just saying, if you're going to use, go seek out these services.
Other questions? Okay.
Well, thank you, and if anyone comes up with anything later, come see me.
And so the presentation flows really nicely into the next presentation, talking about the balancing of rights and responsibilities, resident-centered practices within our residential care homes. And we know that this is a model that is a little bit different and has, over time, there's more information out there, and that not everyone is comfortable with this, right? It isn't something where people thought they would be dealing with or supporting people in this way. And so that's why we really want to make sure that you guys have all of the information possible so that we can see the best outcomes, not only for the individuals we're serving, but for the homes that are supporting them and the individuals who are working there. So with, oh, I think I'm the clicker person. With that, oh, this is our phone number and our email address and our pictures, which I think is funny. I have the same dress on, that's funny. All right, so these are the goals of our agenda today: understanding residents' rights and in residential care homes, exploring the concept of the dignity of risk, so people may not be familiar with that term, and then clarifying the involuntary discharge rights and requirements to make sure that everyone has a clear understanding there. All right, and we will. So, do you want to start there? Oh, no, you guys are starting after. Okay. Overview of residents' rights in the residential care home. There is an established Bill of Rights for residents in each residential care home, and I think you guys are well aware of this. When individuals live in a residential care home, it's important that they understand their rights. They have the right to dignity, respect, and consideration of their personal preferences. We also have a guidebook. Is everybody familiar with our new guidebook? Yes? Okay, and I just saw the publication of it in Polish. We have it in Spanish, in Polish, and we're getting it in Creole, correct?
I think we also have it in Portuguese as
Oh,
well.
Portuguese, okay. So if you have individuals who speak other languages, you can go onto the website and print that out so that everyone, we wanted to make sure that everyone had access to the information. We changed this guidebook from the other toolkit that we had where it had a lot of legal language built in. We kind of pulled that out and put it at the back of the guide so that individuals can reference that information. But the bulk of it is what their rights are, what to expect, and on the digital link, you can actually click on things and it'll bring you to the language that it's associated with. These are the statutes and the regulations that are for residential care homes, and I'm hoping you all know sort of where these are. You're looking at them when you're looking at the services that you provide. And now we'll go into the dignity of risk, and Cindy and Tasha are going to speak about that.
So what is dignity of risk? Dignity of risk is being able to make choices that could have negative consequences and getting to experience those consequences. Why does this matter? Dignity of risk is essential in person-centered care as it empowers individuals to make their own choices, even those choices that involve risk. Thereby, it's respecting their autonomy and preferences, and this approach enhances their quality of life and builds trust between the caregivers and individuals, and it ensures that the care is tailored to each person's unique value and needs. Balancing risk versus safety, finding the balance. Balancing risk and safety involves assessing potential risk while actively engaging individuals in discussions about their preferences and comfort levels. And by providing clear information and developing a collaborative plan of care and continuously monitoring outcomes, staff can empower individuals to make informed choices that respects their autonomy while ensuring their safety. I'll pass it over to Tasha.
So we have a story regarding James. Let me introduce you to James, a fictional character, and we're going to explore an example on residents' rights, dignity of risk, and provide responsibilities for everyone. James is 58 years old. He has lived in your residential care home for about 2 years. He's living with schizophrenia and a long history of substance use disorder. James has recently taken a strong interest in his own recovery. attending off-site support groups, reconnecting with families, voicing a desire for more independence. At the same time, staff has noticed that James has resumed occasional alcohol use. This has raised concerns, not because of the house rules against alcohol, since RCHs follow a social model and do not prohibit alcohol outright, but because his drinking is starting to cause tension among other residents, particularly those who are also in recovery, and some report feeling unsafe or destabilized. This situation invites us to consider how we balance the right of one resident with the well-being of others. James have the right to make personal choices, even ones that involve risk. But as a provider, you also have a duty to create an environment that is community living, addressing conflict or emerging safety concerns. And the next slide will explore what this might look like.
Okay, so what does dignity of risk look like in action? First and foremost, we need to honor James's autonomy. He has the right to make personal choices, including choices that involve some level of risk. With that said, we also want to support him in taking responsibility for how his choices affect others. This doesn't mean punishment, it means accountability with dignity. Second, we use personalized, person-centered support planning as a core tool. This approach respects James as the expert in his own life. This isn't one-size-fits-all process. It's a collaborative conversation with James about his goals, challenges, triggers, and preferences. Maybe he'd benefit from a modified daily routine, a peer recovery coach, or a plan for how to handle high-risk situations.
And third, we bring in external supports. Resident care homes are a part of a larger system. Mental health providers, substance use counselors, care managers, and recovery programs can all be part of the solution. You are not expected to do everything in-house, but can be a vital resource to help build those bridges of support.
Next slide. And so, of course, that's a perfect world, and we don't live in a perfect world. There are times where James might be collaborative and work with individuals, maybe even for a long period, but it might not always stay that way. And so, ultimately, it may rise to a level where it may no longer be safe or appropriate. And so let's talk about a situation where the trust and relationship between the resident and the residential care home truly breaks down. Next slide. So, when things break down, issuing an involuntary discharge is a serious step, and it must be handled with care, transparency, and the adherence to the law. First, a discharge must meet one of the legal criteria under Connecticut law, such as medical needs that may exceed what the home can provide, a risk to themselves or others, or non-payment. This isn't a tool for conflict management. Instead, this is more about the legal process. The residents must be given a 30-day written notice unless an emergency exception applies. That notice has to clearly state the reason, the effective date, their right to appeal, and must be submitted to the Long-Term Care Ombudsman discharge portal. That portal use is mandatory for all involuntary discharges issued by the residential care home. And while the law doesn't require that homes take every possible action before issuing a discharge notice, it is strongly recommended that you demonstrate good faith efforts to resolve those issues that are causing you to issue the discharge notice. Why? Because in the event of a resident issuing or requesting an appeal, the documentation, the clear documentation of what you tried, why it didn't work, can make all the difference when things get escalated to that level. And so we all share a common goal, right? The goal is to ensure that residents' rights are respected, that any transition, whether planned or not, is handled with dignity, fairness, and transparency. When there's a shared goal, the Ombudsman Program is always happy to assist. And that said, right, it's important to clarify that the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program does not represent the facility in this process. Our statutory role is to represent the interests of the resident. That means when we receive a discharge notice, we're often reaching out to find out whether the resident was informed, whether they were offered appropriate support, and whether their voice was included in that process. We're not here to approve or deny discharge actions, and we can't provide any legal advice. So for technical or procedural questions, such as what language to use in your notice when issuing it, or how to interpret a statute, we recommend also connecting with your provider association, your legal counsel, or the Department of Public Health. Our role is to ensure that residents know their rights, have a chance to appeal, and are treated with respect throughout the process. When those values and goals are aligned and everyone's involved, the outcome, whatever it is more likely to be fair and just. And so, next slide. Let's take a look at James's situation and how things may escalate. And so, as part of his autonomy, James was allowed to have alcohol. However, his use became more frequent, and he was visibly intoxicated multiple times in shared areas, such as the dining room and in hallways. Over the span of a few weeks, James experienced several falls, and 2 of which were in common areas. On one occasion, staff were unable to safely assist him to get back to his feet due to the level of his intoxication. And as a result, they had to call 911 to transport him to the emergency room. Another evening, James became verbally aggressive and blocked access to a hallway, which created a sense of fear among staff and residents. These events were well documented throughout incident reports, and staff made multiple attempts to engage James in support, including referrals and care coordination, of which he may have previously even agreed to. Ultimately, the facility determined that James's continued behavior created a credible health to safety risk, not just for himself, but to others, and in the shared living environment. A 30-day involuntary discharge notice was issued and properly submitted to the Long-Term Care Ombudsman portal, citing a clear and supportable legal basis under statutes and regulations. And yeah, next slide. And so, using the involuntary discharge portal, under Connecticut law, all involuntary discharges from residential care homes must be submitted through the portal. That includes both standard and emergency discharge notices. The portal doesn't replace your responsibility to give proper notice, it enhances it, ensuring that residents are informed of their rights, including the right to appeal, and that the Ombudsman can monitor the discharge process and engage when appropriate. Importantly, the portal submission is not a green light or a denial. It's not a gatekeeper. The Ombudsman role is to ensure that the resident's voice is heard and that the rights are respected and their right to appeal is followed up on if desired. It's not to authorize or reject a particular discharge notice. If you're unsure what to submit or how the process works, again, suggesting to reach out to your legal department, the Greater Department of Public Health, or sister facilities that may have gone through a process similar to you. And so we've included a link to the discharge portal in our resources, but this is where I think we should leave today, and happy to discuss further the kind of major implications that this may have when working with residents. Is while we wear the hat, go back one. There we go. While we wear the hat of the resident advocate, I want to be clear. When we receive discharge notices without proper notification, without clear cause, and without any evidence of good faith planning, we're going to push back. We're going to ask questions. We reach out to residents and make sure that their rights are being respected and they understand what's happening to them. But when we see a facility take its role seriously, when we see documentation of a clear process, efforts to support the resident, that tells us that this wasn't taken lightly and that you're doing this as a last resort after following your due diligence. And that's the goal. It's even when the outcome is difficult, the process feels better and it's more transparent and more respectful. And that's the goal, not just checking boxes, but a discharge process that truly honors the dignity and rights of residents while also recognizing the challenges you face of running a home. So we're in this together, and we thank you for doing the hard work with integrity and look forward to taking any questions that you may have. Again, we have the resources on the second page there that we'll send out with the slides so that individuals, if they have questions or concerns, we're happy to.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Go ahead.
So I
So I just want to say, oh, thank you. I think they take on a lot, and so I want to thank the owners for taking good care of our DMIS clients, because often they're not always taken good care of or taken seriously. So, but I have a question. The RCHs don't have medical records, they don't have an electronic medical record, all that. So where are you expecting the documentation? So if they don't really have records, then what are you really looking for? Because as I was sitting here listening to it, I was like, well, if you're asking for that, what is the expectation? Because I don't want them set up to not be able to provide if that's what you're asking for, because it's really not.
So I'm going
They're not- it's not a medical model.
Because DPH can, so Cheryl, I'll kick that over to you. Back one.
Good morning, I'm Cheryl from DPH. So we've seen things written on white-lined paper, and we'll accept that. It's a form of their documentation, so we would take that into consideration. And the only other thing I wanted to piggyback on to Dan was, a lot of residents are conserved, so please be sure to work with their conservator if you're having concerns or issues, and I know sometimes it's hard to get in touch with them. And that would, Mairead, I know, has done some work with the court system on that. But it's really important to document attempts to reach conservators, things that you're doing to try to help them, the resident, because we will look at that. Thank you.
So, and we present these things a lot, so if I already said this to you guys in a different session, let me know. But talking about conservators, make sure you're looking at the conservator sheet. Often people will say, well, they're conserved. And our answer is going to be, of what? Person or estate. No, even past person and estate. We are a limited scope state. So just because someone has a conservator of person, they're not allowed to, the court is not allowed to take away all of their rights. As of 2007, limited scope state. You need to know what rights that judge took away. They should not be global. If we're finding judges making global ones, we're bringing that back to the probate court administrator. Those orders should be very specific as to what they're conservator of. I don't think people know that, and they think the conservator makes all decisions. They do not in our state. So be really careful to look at that, because that might be something that trips you up. Okay? Regina.
So how we keep a record of our residents at Brass City is every one of my residents have a chart, and we do daily charting of on all shifts of what's going on with the resident. And I know it's kind of different for people with bigger residents, but we keep charts every single day, every shift, to know what our residents is doing, what behavior they experience, if they ate lunch, if they went to doctor's appointments. Everything is documented every day. Okay. It's a requirement at Brass City.
We've seen some homes that use a communication book, so that the day team might know what the night team has going on, and so that's another, like, you're writing down if someone had a really challenging day or something's happening. So records, documentation in a communication book that you reached out to the conservator got back, or a family member, that's what we're talking about.
I agree with Regina. While it's the best practice, I know some of the residential care homes, it's not customary that they do the documentation that way, because of maybe the volume of number of residents they have, the staffing, So one thing I found it really beneficial was in terms of keeping track of the documentation. Just make sure you have an interdisciplinary team meeting with the residents, and present all the data as to what efforts you have honestly taken with the residents to find all the supports. So keep a timeline of events, and make sure you have a, like you do in minutes. Make the resident, have the interdisciplinary team sign, and have the, recommend the resident sign as well, suggest, so we can have a proof of the multiple meetings that were held before we, took the final stage of issuing a 30-day involuntary discharge notice. So.
And you can have, the activities or what you're offering in your home for individuals to do, support groups, things like that, where if they happen often, it can also be something that someone gradually starts to attend if you're having those support services within your home.
So when you talk about involuntary discharge notices and putting in the efforts to help somebody with their care plans and things of that nature, but it's getting to a point where they are a risk at themselves and others, and you try to refer them to other RCHs. Other RCHs won't accept them due to the fact that they're a risk of themselves and others. You do go through with an involuntary discharge process, and there's nowhere really to place this resident due to the fact that they're a risk of themselves and others, and the only really place to put them is a homeless shelter. And that, when you present that to DBH and the Long-Term Care Ombudsman, they don't really want a resident to go to a homeless shelter. So where necessarily do DPH and Long-Term Care Ombudsman want an RCH to place a resident?
So from us, you would hear pushback, like if you were referring them to another RCH, what tool or what resource does one RCH have that the other doesn't? So that would be one of my questions. What can they offer that person? How can they support them if you're saying you can't support them? So that would be something we would bring up as a question. Related to you are allowed to refer someone to a shelter, but that has become more challenging. You have to have that shelter available on that day, which we don't always see. One of the things we're even talking to our skilled nursing facilities about is knowing the resources in your area, right? The CAN, who helps with homelessness. We have had some individuals finding out from the person where they might not work with you on this, but where they were before, how they were supported before. It's not easy, right? We totally get that, but we want to make sure that the person's been given the opportunity to appeal wherever you said you were sending them, and that they know the next steps. But I do know that that's not always easy. If it's an emergency, we would expect that you would send them to the hospital, right? And there's that emergency. If someone is escalating and they're blocking a hallway and you or the other members of your community feel threatened, that you're calling for assistance from the police, they're going to the hospital, and then you're taking measures from there so that we know at least your setting is safe and secure at that point. DPH, any other?
So we would look for a safe discharge. We have seen residents get discharged to homeless shelters without their meds, without any resources at all, and it really sets them up for a failure. So I was going to say, medical evaluation to get to the root cause of what is causing the behaviors, if possible, and definitely call 911 if you have to. We would just look at the documentation, what you've done. An emergent discharge is an emergent discharge. You have to do what you have to do in real time to keep everybody safe, but continue to work with them if you can. We don't like to see anybody go to shelters, just like we wouldn't want to go to one unless we had to. Or a hotel. That's another place we've seen residents get transferred to, and they don't have the resources, to get their basic needs met, like food and their meds, and get into critical appointments.
Or to continue to stay past a very short period of time sometimes.
Yep.
Okay, I have one here, and then I'll come to you, Derek.
I had one over here first.
Oh, there, okay, so we'll go 1, 2, 3.
So my question was similar to hers, is what I'm hearing is we can go through this whole process, but we still can't get rid of the resident. Even if it's an emergency. I've had residents who have tripped somebody, they've gone to the hospital, and it's to find a place for them aside from the police department. Can we refuse them? They get like a restraining order that because they live in the same home, so it's considered now a domestic, and they can get an order that they can't be near that other resident. So we can't even take them back into our facility, and we don't even know. They could be on the streets. We don't know where they are. When the police, we call the police, they come, they arrest that person, and that person gets a restraining order from them because it's domestic, because they live together. And where's our protection that we haven't followed that whole process, because now they have a restraining order from our facility that they can't enter the premises. But also, there's really nothing we can do because no RCH wants a resident that's become violent in my home. And I don't want to lie to another RCH. They lie to me. I've gotten them. It's the unspoken word. We don't share all the details. And, better than an eviction, basically, which is what that is, an involuntary dismissal is basically an eviction. Nobody wants to have an eviction at their facility either. So a lot of lying is happening. And there's not even RCHs that have rooms or anything. So we're left with these residents and then my other residents are like, oh, they got to do it. We get to do it. It's just become a spiral of nobody caring anymore because they get to do it. You don't do anything about it. I'm getting blamed that I allow them to behave that way in the facility because I do nothing. They don't know because I can't share with them because of HIPAA. I'm doing everything I can to get rid of them, but that's what I want to tell them, but of course I can't. But my hands are tied and there's nothing we can do and it's choking the system and there's got to be other ways that we have protection too. And all I hear is the residents' rights. But what about the staff rights and the facility homeowners' rights and the other 16 residents? We have 17. So the other 16 people, and I want to abide by all these rights that are for all of my residents, and 90% of them are really good, but they're turning us into flop houses. And, that's not what I signed up for. I want to give them quality of care. I want to give them good food. As far as documentation, I think that's a great idea, but I was told by somebody once, if you document even their weight or their blood pressure and something happens to them, we're now almost a medical facility. What are we doing with that information? Is it getting to the right people to give them proper care? And we're holding on to that information that we could be liable. So we do no documentations of that. We do little notes that just go into each individual's file. They were swearing at another residence today, and we put them in there, and I basically have this pile, and I'll take this pile and say, okay, maybe time for you to find a new place to live. You're not happy here. You're fighting with everybody. But that's all we will do at our facility. We do not take any other notes because I don't want the liability. We're non-medical. And if I'm keeping these notes in these journals for every resident and I didn't seek out medical help that, their blood pressure was high or their weight was too high and they have CVA, congested heart failure,
I don't think we're talking
the
about
liability.
medical documentation, more about interaction during the day,
Yeah.
About how their day is going, not looking for that record piece.
Yeah. I'm just worried that we're all doing this and we can follow all those rules and we still can't get rid of the resident.
So, and I want to step back well before we're talking about getting rid of someone, because I think there are points where we can intervene and offer assistance, and that's what this is. We're looking at backward. Looking at it, I understand that we've gotten to this point with some people, right? You're at a point where it feels like you have no way out of a bad situation in the home. Before it gets there, that's why we're trying to give you these tools so we don't get to that point, or by the time you get to that point, you have used the resources and done everything that you can to get there. So we'll start with that. You asked about the resident rights, the staff rights, the owner's rights. I can't speak to staff and owner, right? That's separate. That's up to you guys when you take on the responsibility of any business. For my team, right? Sometimes residents go after them or are aggressive and stuff. They have certain rights as a state employee, but they also have things that they have to do under their job. So understanding that when you're taking that on. One of the things that I don't see people using all the time, if a resident calls us because they're having a negative interaction or there's something going wrong in the home, and the resident reaches out to us to represent them. So let's say Tasha's representing a resident in your home and things have been escalating and you might give an involuntary discharge. If the other residents are upset and aggravated and they feel like their rights or they're scared of this person, they should be calling in, and I have to assign a separate regional ombudsman to the other residents to be their voice, to advocate on their behalf. So the office, we are responsible to ensure that everyone's rights are heard and protected. So the other residents would be represented by a separate regional ombudsman. Okay, people don't always call that in. We only see that once in a while, but you can.
There is one ombudsman assigned to.
Yep.
President, right?
Yep. One ombudsman is assigned, so it has to come in and I'll make a decision on who gets assigned. So Cindy, raise your hand, Cindy. is a new position that we have, and she is a community ombudsman. And so I would most likely assign Cindy to the other individuals to represent the rights of the individuals in that community if it was to move forward. And then as far as the involuntary discharge notices go, if it's escalating that much and it's an emergency, I'm not sure everyone knows how to use the emergency discharge. It's not a typical notice, and it has to go to DPH, and there's other requirements under that when it's being filed and the attestation to that. So you may want to reach out to your association to be educated on that process, how to do that appropriately, because we know that otherwise, yes, the hospital may send them back unless you have initiated that process. I also want to say, I looked, and in the past year, Dan looked because I asked him to, in the past year, 365 days, there's only been 50 involuntary discharge notices. So like only half of the homes have even issued one, let alone what we've been able to work with the individuals to, communicate, and it doesn't move forward. And then at an emergency level, there's even fewer, I think a handful of those. So we're not talking about a large number of notices, and hopefully some of these resources will help with that intervention, and that number will come even further down. Hang on a second. We capture all of them because you have to send them into the portal. If you don't send it into the portal, then they're not legal.
I disagree that you're not capturing all of them based on things that are happening.
Well, then they're not following the law. The law says they must go into the portal. So if you're not putting them in the portal, they're not being captured, they're not legal anyhow. So for what's being submitted into the portal, there have been 50 in the past year. If you're not doing them in the portal, you shouldn't be putting them out anyhow. Hang on, I have one question over here. No.
One of the reasons can be because the portal says, what's your discharge plan? Find a house for the resident where he or she is moving. Shouldn't it be the responsibility of the conservator? Because now we are engaged with our current residents, right? One resident is creating problem, you sat with them, made notes, everything, right? Reporting to the state. Now we are putting it in the portal, and it says find a residence for the discharge in the discharge plan itself.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we find where he should go? He shouldn't be going to the shelter. He should become homeless. Find a private apartment for him, or what? I mean, it becomes a little challenging.
Mm-hmm. It says that you will assist them in that currently. That's part of what it says you're going to do, to work with that individual to help them. And that's why we're hoping that moving forward, a lot of these you'll be able to have sort of those resources and to know what those resources are in your general community, and how to support that person. But again, if it comes to an emergency, they would go to the emergency room, and that in the portal, it's different. You don't have to,
It has a tentative discharge location. And so while you're not required to guarantee them another place, if it were to go to appeal, the questions that would be asked is, where have you supported the resident in doing it? There are historical situations. You could bring the horse to water, as it were. You can call other locations. They could have everything all set. They have an open bed. They're willing to accept the resident. And on the day of discharge, the resident refused. And I'll note, all these issues that you guys are raising, these are the same issues that we share as well, especially when we have a situation where there are opposing resident rights. Just like that balance that we saw, the balance between autonomy of one resident and the rights of all residents to have a safe and hospitable home-like environment. And so we share these challenges with you and understand that it's not always cookie cutter, and that the discharge location for one resident is not always going to be the appropriate discharge location for another. Safe and appropriate, a homeless shelter may ultimately be the place that may be appropriate for a resident, but it may not be. There may be some medical needs of the resident. Say they're on diabetes medication that has to be refrigerated. A homeless shelter may not support that. And so when it goes to appeal, and again, we're not the hearings office, we're just resident advocates. These are some of the things that you consider when you think about, am I supporting a resident to find a safe and appropriate alternate location? And so there are a million ways that could go. And so your job is to say that I've offered several other places. I've worked with a resident. If a resident wants to submit applications to another location, we've provided the support to allow them to do so. And if it goes to hearings, this is why your documentation is key, Because if the hearings office says, well, what did you do? And you have nothing to show, that hearings office may make a different determination than if you were to provide succinct, elaborate notes and support to say, we did all of this, and the resident refused to participate with us.
And we've had,
difficulty is we just don't know where to ask for that information. Whether you have that information, that would be very helpful. Yeah, somebody needs high level of care. How do you do that? There's nothing we can, there's nobody we can get in touch with unless we send them to the hospital. That's the only way sometimes we can
Well,
do it. So there's no way we can.
in a critical incident, but if someone is escalated, and so that's part of, there's a few things here that I'm hoping you guys got out of all of these sessions. One is that supporting individuals, offering, if you're home and community-based setting and the person has a significant mental illness, that our referrals being made to DEMIS so that they have support. Maybe they want to elect to be on the mental health waiver, and during that time, their case manager can help you. When we get calls and there's a situation related to someone and needing a higher level of care, maybe there's a real escalation, maybe their mental wellness is very unstable at the time, I often reach out to Erin and Amy and Demas and say, hey, there's a situation at this residential care home. Amy has been very responsive, her team members, in trying to support people. So realizing that, and it's harder if it gets way down the track than if we're starting to support someone back here. And so that's why part of this was to make sure that people knew these resources, that people had the ability to reach out and to educate the residents on them. This is all new, right? Making sure that people have this information, that this setting is able to use the waivers, not just mental health, physical, right? If it's someone who's an older adult, maybe they have the older adult waiver, or someone with a brain injury, and they're coming out of a nursing home and they can have the acquired brain injury waiver. Those types of things to support people so that we're not getting to that point. We have had people who have shelters as a destination. These guys reach out and they say, no, I'm fine going to the shelter. I've been there before. I know those guys, but that's their norm. If that's what we get from the resident, we tap out. And we have had that where I'm like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, that is their comfort level. That's their norm. And we respect that as well. Hang on, I had one over here first. She's been waiting a while.
We were coming over here.
Oh,
right?
no. Okay. Okay.
Over there, and we'll come back.
Oh, I know. Oh, and Derek had one.
Hi, Mayreed.
Hi.
You're all for resident rights, which is great, but when we have questions like this, tough questions, can we come to you as well, or who represents our rights?
Your association, I would say you'd have to go to them, or as far as your rights, we don't represent your rights. It is our responsibility to be sure that you're informed of how things have to go for the residents and you have access to information. So in a situation where it's already there, it's going to be challenging for us to do. But as far as education and informing your staff, we can come out and do things like this and talk to you guys and talk about resources, but not when it's about a case, because then we can't really comment on it.
So we're just supposed to go to Karch?
You can reach out to Karsh. You can reach out for education through DEMIS. I know that if there's questions, sometimes people do ask DPH for questions if stuff come up. But again, not so much case-related, but overarching stuff we can give information to about the process and resources and what we might know is in your area, or connecting you to people in your area that you might know. I think, again, getting ahead of it, but in this situation, we can't really take on that role.
I have one other question. Right now, I have a state nurse that I've had to hire because I reopened, and I discharged somebody last week under her tutelage, and she didn't tell me to do any sort of discharge paperwork or anything. So I'm just wondering, how are they vetted, and what do they know and not know? Because I was anticipating she would know something like that.
That I don't know. I don't know anything about the nurse that you have, but they would have to go through our portal, and there would have to be that would be challenging. They have to go through the portal.
Which I will do now, but I had no idea.
Yeah. And we could talk about that. Okay. And so that's why we're also doing this, to make sure that people have all of the information and the education around what's required and how to ensure that you're doing it appropriately, because that's what we want to see, right? We want everybody to be successful. Derek.
You might have answered this, so I do apologize. Is there an appeal process for a resident that it needs higher level of care? And the higher level of care is based on non-mental health. It's they're in a colostomy bag or something like that where we no longer can support them in the facility. Can they go through an appeal process for that?
There is always an appeal process.
Okay.
So, but in that case, right, we often see that. So we'll see a couple of things. One, I'm going to take one that I know. Someone was having repeated falls at one of the RCHs, right? And they were working with this person, was an older adult, and had started using a cane, went from the cane to needing, they were kind of using two, what are those? The cane with the four things. No, they're not a walker. They actually had two canes.
They were using dual four-pronged canes.
Four-prong canes.
Real custom
right?
setup, it sounds like.
Which wasn't offering enough stability for them. And the person kept falling. The RCH was trying to work with this individual, but this is not something that they're going to be able to improve, right? Maybe they can get PT in under the elder waiver or something like that. But they needed to go to the hospital. They then went to a nursing home. At the nursing home, they had a subsequent health issue that would really make it impossible for them to do stairs and their mobility, and they weren't going to be able to return to that residential care home. The residential care home is still obligated to send them an involuntary discharge notice and say, we're not able to meet your needs because your needs are higher than we're able to take care of here. We have stairs, right? We have stairs to get in, the mobility in our bathrooms, it's a high risk. And at that point, we will go and talk to the resident and 9 times out of 10 say, you can't do it. Like they can appeal it if they want, but we would not encourage them. We would kind of talk with them and say, look, the physical plant-wise, they're not saying they don't want you back. We had a really nice owner when this happened who actually went and talked with the person and said, I'll come visit you. I'll make sure your friends can stay in touch with you. Physically, we just can't, the environment doesn't suit our ability to care for you anymore. So yes, it gets filed. It's in there because the person's been discharged, but they need that other level of care.
Okay. So probably very rare in terms of, the amount of those
well,
situations.
You'd be surprised.
And most times,
I would say those happen more than not.
most times the residents want to leave at that point in some situations.
Not always. They have in their mind they think they're going to get back. They're going to.
Every case is different. But you guys are talking about a lot of cases that we share, and when we get it, we follow up with the resident. And so we receive it, we talk to the resident gives us some, maybe we reach out to you, like what's going on, and you talk, well, they had like 8 falls in 2 weeks, and they've got a history of, on and on. And the facility, you guys say openly, like, I love this resident. I've had this resident in my home for 23 years. They're part of my family. And if they resolve, if things do get better, I'd be the first to want this person back. And the resident feels the same way. There are a lot of situations like that where we come into it, and although there's an involuntary discharge notice that gets issued, the resident doesn't want to appeal. It's a mutual understanding.
Yeah.
If they have a colostomy bag, for example, they had a short-term perforation, et cetera, and they're on a short-term colostomy bag, they're unable to return at this time, but there's a potential that maybe in 6 to 8 months they'll have a reconstructive surgery and they'll be able to, or they can start to be trained to manage it themselves. Just having a colostomy bag in and of itself may not necessarily be it if they can independently manage it safely. And so there's a million ways it goes, and that's another example of that respect, transparency, and openness to work with a resident that when we call them, we don't even call you. We may not even call you because the resident is like, nah, we understand. This is what's up. But
I don't think we're getting all of those. Just so you know, when someone goes to a higher level of care, you still need to issue the involuntary discharge notice. I don't think we're getting all of those. Yeah, I don't think we are.
Yeah. You're not. Well, yeah. Unable to capture. Just nothing against that. People are doing it intentionally. It's just unable to
That's why we're
capture
here,
all of the
because
information.
it was easier to tell you all at once than piecemeal it out.
So I just got 3 more things real quick. Deidre, thank you for bringing up CARCH. I'll do a little plug real quick. Make sure if you don't know about CARCH, look up CARCH and make sure you become a member. We need as many members as possible. So that's one thing. The other thing that I want to say is, and I want to be careful with my words here, is I think that we should sort of have an exploratory brainstorming because some of the interpretation of how I'm interpreting the information regarding substance abuse and mental illness, it almost seems as if if I wasn't in the industry and I was a person from the community, that residential care homes are places for that population specifically. Just as I came into the room and listening to everyone speak, it's almost like we're putting those people, I don't want to use that term, I hate to use that term, but they're going into residential care homes. And if I was a person in the community, my interpretation is, oh, I can't go to a residential care home if I don't have a substance abuse. And I think that the state's very familiar with putting people in particular groups into settings like that, and lawsuits tend to start to happen. And so we want to be I think we should be very careful with like it becoming a conversation of that, where the residential care homes are for mental illness and for substance abuse people. And I don't present my facility as that at all. So I want to accept as many people as possible, whatever fashion you have, and if I can support you, that's great. And so I just want to make sure that we're not going in that direction of that they're all going into those types of settings.
So I have a couple answers for that one. So when we're talking about residential care homes, and we talked about this in a few of the meetings that we've had, we have seen a shift in our overall levels of care, right? Even in nursing homes, we're seeing people with higher level of care in the nursing homes because people are choosing to return to the community, return to a less restrictive environment. That is part of those lawsuits, right? Was to offer individuals the opportunity to live in the least restrictive environment, the Olmstead Act. Under that, they have choice. We are also seeing a larger population of people who are dealing with, right? Historically, we have not seen this level of our community dealing with substance misuse, having an addiction to something where I think historically, and anyone jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, historically some of the substances people were taking weren't these chemical substances that changed their brain and the addiction level to where it is today. And so the support that people need is different. We have a higher number of people in our greater community. Residential care homes are for everyone and anyone who meets that level of care. Anyone can be supported. If they meet the criteria, they can go and be in that setting. But we are seeing more people just in our general community having need, right? Need in this way and needing that level of support. So that's why we want to make sure that you guys have that information. And it depends on where the RCH is sometimes. It depends on the population that they're supporting. But we do want to see, I would like to see broad use of the RCHs with people of different ages, different backgrounds, and different levels of needs. And that's why we talked about all of the waivers, not just the mental health waiver.
Yeah, I just think that some of this could be handled through the interview process with the client before they come in, the person that you're serving, and maybe ask them in the event that you would have to be discharged, have that open conversation. I don't want to see that happen, but what would that look like for you? Prepare them, let them take ownership of it, and then they know through that process, in the process that you're filling out the application, you want to live in my home. Let's talk about all things, including something that's really, we don't want to see happen. That this is the ultimate thing that I need to talk to you about that I don't want to see happen with you. And what would you like me to do in this type of a situation if you were being the one? And I think if we could get them to have something in writing that they owned up to, I think that puts it back in their court and protects the provider a little bit more.
I don't think there's a protection there because they can put anything they want in writing and there's no way, they can't sign away a right and they can't.
Well, the Patient Bill of Rights and the RCH guidebook is actually a great tool that you can use. You're obligated to inform them of their rights, but in that comes their responsibilities, including some of the situations in which that if they do this, they may be issued a discharge notice. And that's clear as day in there, that if they stop paying you, you have the right to issue discharge notice. If they are a threat to themselves or others, you can't just start assaulting people. I will have to issue a discharge notice to you, and I think that's a good opportunity. It's required that you do have that conversation and provide them with that information in writing. So
that personal accountability. I get what you're saying, having those discussions and having that personal accountability. I'm just saying, like, you can't just say, well, they signed this when they came in. But having those conversations, and I think when we were talking about documentation, if you're seeing someone, like, remember when you came in and we talked about, Like I'm starting to see the red flags here and those types of things, and helping to walk with someone, and not in a blame way, but look, I'm seeing these things here, I want to get you some support. What can I do? Versus, you're not behaving, I'm going to be sending you out. Those feel different.
It's all engagement.
Yeah.
It's all in how you engage that situation.
Yep.
It's almost like advanced directives. If you have to go to the hospital, what hospital do you prefer?
Yeah.
Things like that.
You have one here, one there.
One second, we have
This
the
poor
young
woman over here has
lady
been over-
been waiting forever.
Okay, we have two. These two right here. And then we may have to scoot along because we have our presenters that have to come up and talk.
I think, me? No, back behind.
No.
We could do this for 3 straight days. We need
know.
a full symposium just on this.
This is my last question, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Just let me know, can you just tell me when the emergency discharge is supposed to take place? I'm just gonna be frankly and honest with you, and it's been such a struggle at our facility. You just said about when it comes to risk to others. When you have residents that's constantly smoking in their rooms, smoking crack, doing all of this, and you have extended nothing but length because you sit there and you say, I don't want to make this person homeless. I'm giving you a chance. I'm letting you still stay here. But this is getting ridiculous when it's like a domino effect. And when you say it becomes into the residential care homes, yes, that's exactly what's happening. The mental illness and the drugs, this is what's coming into our facility. They come in, you don't get the truth when you get that application. You only get some of it because there's some of it they don't want you to know. Until they get you into that facility, then it's hell getting them out the facility. When is enough? That's all I'm asking. I have residents here that is risking burning themselves, cigarettes falling to sleep. We have pictures. We have documents. We have everything. Okay? And we present these things to the conservator. We present these things to who we need to present them to, and they're still being overlooked.
Yeah.
What is happening is one resident is saying if it's okay if one resident do it, then we all can do it. If nothing is happening here, then nothing is happening there. All I want to know, when is enough? When they burn themselves to death in their room, when they kill somebody else, the drug effect now has high rise because when they see one person getting by with it, now you're stuck with a whole facility. Who's going to want to come into our facility that is a regular person when you have a history of a residential care home where it's mostly drugs and addicts in there? Where are you going to get the normal applications? Because when they hear about what's going on in your facility, they're not going to want to come to that facility. So you're stuck with these people. So I'm just asking, when is enough? I have a resident now that I have been trying to get rid of. Sending things through the portal, and I have been turned around to do this. You got to do that. You got to find them a place to stay. You have to do this. We have their rights, but where are our rights? Tell us that. Where is our rights? When is it? Do we get the right to say enough is enough, and they have to go?
Jesus, sorry.
Daniel. I have trouble containing these guys sometimes. I understand what you're saying. We do not represent your rights, but smoking, we've said this throughout these sessions. Smoking is a no. They cannot smoke in their rooms. Cannot. But you're not presenting it to us. You're issuing a notice to the resident. You're not presenting to us. You're presenting it to a hearings officer if they appeal. The hearings office is not in our department. We do not oversee the hearings office.
It's like you fight us. Why do y'all fight us?
Our obligation legally, our role, we must represent the resident and understanding their rights.
What about the staff?
You all have to have your own representation. That is the requirement.
So this person can sit here and continue to break fire hazards, continue to piss all over the facility.
If you have an emergency,
Fire departments to constantly come out, to all these things that constantly go on in the facility, and they are still being supported, and we have to support them by finding them a place to stay when they're not even respecting the place that they're at now.
if you do, so I get what you're saying.
The fire
The fire,
Constantly in and out, in and out. The fire marshals are so fed up with this resident, fed up, that they are willing to say, you know what, we want to evict them ourselves because they are tired of coming to our facility, because these residents are on drugs. They're tired of coming to our facility because of the mental abuse, the mental this. They are so sick of it. And the residents, those are the only applications that are coming across our desk. And we have to fill our rooms because we're obligated.
Pam, we hear you. We hear you. We hear you. But, and we want to support you too. We want to support you as well. You have a lot of resources in Bridgeport. The problem is we don't know them all. And so this is the reason why we're doing something like this, because we know that you are having a lot of concerns and issues in your RCHs. So that's why we wanted to do it. That's why we wanted to highlight mental health. We wanted to highlight substance abuse, because even though years ago they were mom and pops, and I'm going to be honest with you, I worked in the mental health substance abuse field. I funneled all my residents into RCHs because I thought it was safe to get them off the street. So I know everybody is aging in place. Now they're in recovery homes. And now we have to provide resources or help you to get the resources. And that's why we're here. So we understand your frustration. We understand it. And we're here to support you. All right?
and I want to be clear, if someone is smoking, and DPH can jump in on this, if someone is smoking and putting other residents at risk, what I'm saying is we cannot tell you how to file. You should be reaching out to your association, your peers. Other people have completed these, right? And where it's upheld. If you're not being able to take that across the finish line, or there's an emergency and people are at risk, when you call us, we say, we cannot tell you how to do that. We're not allowed to. We will refer you back to DPH to talk to them about risk. We
may note that while we are not attorneys, we don't pretend to play one on TV. In statute, under 19A, 535A, it clearly explains what an emergency discharge procedure should look like in statute. 19A, 535A, in this PowerPoint presentation is going to include a link directly to that. I am not an attorney.
But you have to follow it exactly or it will get kicked out. That has nothing to do with us. Talk to a peer, call your attorney, have someone assist you in that. Those are the rules. I didn't make the rules, we follow the rules. But smoking in a building, putting other people at risk is not okay. I never want to hear about a building burning down, people being in it. Absolutely, that is something it has happened. We don't want to see that ever again. We want to make sure that people are safe. I'm going to take one more, and then we have to go to our presenters.
Okay, so I'm happy I came last because, I think everybody was in my head. So most of what I wanted to say was said.
Okay.
Just real quick on a lady that was just speaking, I had to discharge 2 people for smoking, and we went through our legal team. So we went through our lawyers, we presented the issues, and they gave us the okay that, yes, this is valuable, you can do the involuntary discharge, and that's how we were able to get them out. And then when they were saying documentation, what we do, I just type up statements, any incidents we type up. We came up with a violation notice that we give when they're breaking any of the rules of the facility, like smoking and stuff like that. So the most documentation that you have when you bring it to your lawyer and they present it to DPH and the ombudsman, you will get that granted. Trust me. You do have to just go through your legal team to get that done. You go through your lawyer and it will definitely happen. They will, and I will say our first one was smoking really, really bad, and because my administrator, I think she might have gave the paperwork to the ombudsman after the fact. You have to follow everything to the T, or they will say, and you'll have your hearing, and the person will be like, yes, I smoke in my apartment, but that person still wasn't kicked out because we didn't upload the paperwork on time. So everything has to be followed, and you will be able to get that granted, okay? So because everything else was said, one of my things that I wanted to say was I've noticed that some residents, I have this one trouble resident, she used the ombudsman. She take that's like her friend, right? So she will cause all kinds of chaos and bully people and harass residents and do all of these things. But her one thing is, I'm calling Brenda. I'm calling Brenda. You know, that's her favorite word. And then we'll get emails and stuff from the ombudsman. And I feel like sometimes some of these residents are doing things that the ombudsman, and I understand, like, you're here to advocate for the residents. That's your job. We get it. But I feel like some of these residents are doing things that clearly the ombudsman see is not right, shouldn't be happening, it's not fair to other residents. And then you're coming to us as management and the directors, and you're like, well, you did, this person said this and that, but like, well, you know what they did wasn't right. So I feel like sometimes when it comes to the ombudsman, and I don't know how your role is, you know, deep, but I feel like some ombudsmen need to tell these residents, no, what you did was wrong. You should not be doing this. It's not legal, X, Y, and Z, instead of coming to us as if we're doing something wrong for now, you know, giving them some type of punishment, or not punishment, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, you know, like reprimanding them for it, you know, writing them up or whatever the case. We're getting in trouble for doing what we have to do. But I don't think that the ombudsmen are checking the residents for the things that they are doing that's wrong. You know, and I don't know if anybody else has that issue, but I find that a lot. And it's like, why are we even having this conversation? You knew it wasn't right when she called you, you know, that type of thing.
So, one, you don't always know what we're saying to them behind closed doors. We have to represent their voice. That is our actual charge requirement by law. We often say things to them like, this doesn't seem like it's going well. Like, they do have conversations with the residents that are not privy. We cannot share. We can only share what the resident allows us to share. We can't even share with DPH and DMIS unless the resident tells us we can. So that's challenging. Sometimes you have no idea what they've told us. And if the other residents are upset, are you calling and asking for a second ombudsman? I'm shooting myself in the foot there because if I get 800 phone calls now for a second ombudsman, I am going to be in trouble. But Cindy, get ready to work. But in that case, that's what we would see. Oh, gosh.
Could we have an ombudsman for us?
You guys can, listen, you can fight for, pass anything you want, get an advocate. That is your right to do.
It would be a good option because everyone else has a right. We have zero rights.
As business owners, right, you're business owners. Business owners work within the constructs of the legal authority of their business. You have attorneys, you have your association. That is what you guys have. The state doesn't give, to my knowledge, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, the state doesn't give advocates for business owners.
Maybe one day people have
You have lobbyists. Yeah, you guys have lobbyists, you don't have ombudsmen. That's how it works. Okay.
Do we have any assisted living facilities or CCRCs here?
Any CCRCs? I don't think so. Yep, we do back there. Sorry, John, I didn't see you. Hello, John's here. Yeah, one.
So you're having kind of a conversation here at this table regarding private versus Medicaid funded folks, and so.
There should be no difference. There shouldn't be any difference according to funding.
Just making sure of that.
Yeah, there should not be a difference. We don't treat people different. We don't get different food. We don't get different. If somebody's paying in the home privately, they do not get different things than someone on.
Were assisted livings invited to this?
This went out, well, we sent it to the associations, and so Matt and Mag sent it to everybody. Brian Sullivan, Ken Prisby, and then they are over the assisted living associations as well.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, because they sent it out. I asked them the other day if they sent it. Is that right, John? They said they blasted it out to everybody. Yeah. All right, well, thank you. Oh.
I'm sorry, I just have one quick question.
We can do this after, too, for a few minutes.
Anyway, as far as people in a residential care home that, like them falling and that kind of thing, at risk for their safety, when they go to the emergency room, like 2 or 3 times, and they're deemed that they're not safe, and the hospital does make them, the rest home, take that particular person back, even with services that are brought in to help with that client, and they go back into the emergency room, do they still have to have the client come back to the rest home where they're not safe?
Unless there's been an emergency discharge or an involuntary transfer discharge done, the person has the right to return to their home, just like you would return to your home. So there's just two mechanisms there, and you'd have to do one of those two mechanisms. But then then it'd be emergency discharge. We cannot serve them. They're not safe. Right. Right. No, it's, unless I would be safe because in 30 days, they're going to say they want to come back and you didn't issue it. But, okay, I'm going to go. I will answer other questions for people. Put your hand down, Q.
Thank you. Hello. I want to introduce two of I'm in the Northwest region, Waterbury, Litchfield, Danbury area, and I have one manager, Jane Jose, from the Elton, which is a 100-bed facility, and then I have Regina Daniels, who owns Brass City. And these are two RCH owners and managers that we work well together in our area. And they're just going to talk about how they deal with different things that go on in their RCHs. Regina's RCH is an 8-bed facility, and Jane is a 100-bed facility. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Regina Daniels. Again, I own Brass City in Waterbury. There's a few things I want to touch on today because I've seen everybody is going through changes and everything with their residential care home. The first one I want to talk about is the dignity of risk in action. So I have a resident that is currently an alcoholic, because you're always an alcoholic once you're an alcoholic. He was given to me from a facility that was closing. He hadn't drank for some time, been sober, he has seizures, he's on several seizure medications. So since he's been there, he has started drinking again. So he went to a funeral with one of his relatives, and he came back with 5 nips. He drank them. My staff found them in the garbage can of the room. I didn't say anything to him because he has rights. So what I did was, I said to the staff, he has a right to drink. So then he went out again on his own, drank, he had a seizure. I had to send him to the hospital. He came back. I didn't say anything again. He went out again, and he drank. So me being a nurse practitioner, I felt it was my duty to educate him of his risks of drinking and having continued seizures because his seizures was related to his drinking. So I sat him down. I educated him about when he drinks, it's going to trigger him to have seizures. I said, every time you have a seizure, you're causing more brain damage. And then you're putting yourself at risk to be dead. Wherever you are, they're not going to know where you live. They're not going to know your family members. And he did not have a cell phone because he doesn't want a cell phone. So he would go to the hospital and nobody would know where he is. He would just be dead. So he said to me, Regina, so you're saying to me that I would die? I said, absolutely. I said, every time you have a seizure, you're at risk for dying. So he promised me, Regina, I'm not going to drink again. And because I continuously have this education with him, he is not picked up again. It's just something I do. Also, I have a resident that she was having a little foul odor from her. No, we're not a medical model, but it's my passion to make sure everybody in my facility is healthy, not only mentally, but medically healthy. So she is a diabetic. There was a smell coming from her. I knew that she showered every day, but everybody was complaining about this smell. So I said to her, what's going on? So she says, I have an open wound on my leg. So when she lifted up her pants leg, her wound was infected. Again, we're not a medical model, but it's my duty to make sure every resident that I have is safe and is able to function. So what did I do? I cleaned the area, dressed it, and I made sure that she was had an appointment at a wound care center. No, again, we're not medical, but I'm going to do everything on my power to make sure that my residents are healthy. So that's what I wanted to talk about, the dignity of risk. I just want to make sure that my residents have the ability to make their own choices, but still make sure that I can support them in the best way that I can. The next one I want to talk about is the documentation. So no, again, we're not a medical model, but where I came from in my background, I want to always make sure that I know exactly what everything is going on in my building, and everything is up and up with my residents. Meaning, if they're not having the same behavior they did when they came in, I want to know about it. I don't want it to be where now we want to put them out because we have no documentation saying that behavior has changed. They can have a UTI. We don't know. A UTI can affect the mental status of an older patient or an older person. So we need to be aware of what's going on with them medically. Even though we're not a medical model, we still need to make sure that they're in a healthy mind state. In ages, another thing Derek had brought up, just people with mental health. I have a young resident. She's 25 years old. She doesn't have mental health, but she has other things that brought her to my facility. And she fits in well with my mental health residents, very well. There's no issues with that. And as far as behaviors and mood that Pam is going through, I sit down with my residents. I meet with their, oh my God, I've got to blame my brain.
It's okay.
Their conservators. I meet with their conservators. I meet with their teams. So for Western, a lot of my residents are connected with Western. We have meetings to see if their medication needs to be adjusted. I'm heavily involved with my residents. I know everybody can't do what I do because I have a limited amount of residents, but I am heavily involved. I'm there all the time, making sure that my residents are being well taken care of. I have an excellent administrator, Shonda. She is a nurse. She is very heavily involved with the residents to make sure if there's an issue with their behavior, we sit down. We have to get to their level, meet them where they are, to talk to them, to see what can I do. I'll say, what can I do to make this better? Can I do this with you? Can we make an agreement? I think if you meet them at where they are, you have a better outcome than just saying, stop this, don't do this. You can't, because they're going to fight against you. The more you do that, the more you're going to have the pushback. So you got to meet them where they are. And as far as the ombudsman, I can't even tell you how grateful I am to, she is like the best. I can call her up and she will come in. If the residents call, they complain about me all the time. They do. And all I can say is she comes, she meets with them, she, asks them what the issue is. I'm not in their room, but I'm willing to sit down with them with Tasha if need be. But I just try to do everything I can for my residents to make sure they have a pleasant stay at Brass City. I also take them out. We have field trips. I know everybody can't do that because it's not as small as mine, but I take them bowling, I take them out to eat as a family. We always sit down as a family to eat. It's just, I think the smaller you are, the more homey you can be, and I try to make sure my residents have that homey environment at all times. We have cookouts. It's just how you talk to them, how you communicate with them. is the best way, because I have, like I said, I have the alcoholics, I have marijuana smokers, I have 4 residents that buy marijuana every Thursday when they get their check. They go downtown, they purchase their marijuana, they come back, they roll, I have them roll it in the house. I said, here, sit at this table, and you roll your marijuana here, so that I know that they're doing the right thing. I'm not gonna discriminate because it is legal. I can't say you can't smoke, it's just like smoking a cigarette now. So I let them freely roll in the house. I laugh. You can. Hey,
Where do I fill out the application?
Listen. I know you might say that it's not something that you want to do at your facility, but it works for my facility, and I don't have a problem with that. It's their right.
How many residents do you have?
I have 8 residents. That's why I said it's a smaller. I understand. I'm just giving you I can only give you what I have. I'm not saying you. Before my role as being an owner, I worked with a mental health waiver. So I was actually one of the ones that helped start the mental health waiver. So it's imperative to know what clientele you're dealing with, either if it's medical, if it's mental health. You should know. You should want to be able to take care of the residents, because we're in fact taking care of them. Even though it's not supposed to be a medical model, we still are taking care of these residents. So we need to know that we're going to have residents with mental health. We're going to have residents that have issues with addiction. We're going to have residents that have medical issues. So we need to be able to understand that. The same way we understand ourselves, we got to understand them as well. We're caring for their lives.
And while this conversation is fantastic, and I love that it's happening, let us finish, and then we'll get into all the good stuff.
Thank you.
That's it?
I'm good.
Well, the biggest takeaway from all this, I feel like, is the system is not perfect, is it? Yeah. There's a lot of holes, but at the same time, it gives us the opportunity to a platform such as this, as I reiterated, gives us the opportunity to identify where the holes are. So that's why we have all the players in the room, right? So people know that there are holes and that we need to somehow brainstorm and come up with ideas to solve them. So, but before that, a little bit about me. My name is Jane. That is spelled Jain, not Jane. The residents call me Jay. My background, by degree, I'm a licensed clinical social worker in Connecticut. By trade, in the past few decades or so, I have worked in New England throughout numerous skilled nursing facilities as a director in operations, risk management. So I come with a little bit of a different perspective into the RCHs. Before I made a switch to the residential care home industry, one of my good friends, actually a few of my good friends, who are very much exposed to and involved in the residential care home industry, said, Jane, why don't you come onto this side of the aisle? It's a lot easier. Somehow we're still friends. I have to say, while the nature of the challenges that I've come across with in residential care homes have varied from skilled nursing facilities, the number of challenges are almost the same. Because, we are taking care of people, human service field. Problems never, cease to exist. They're going to come in one way or the other. Every day you show up to work, 7 o'clock in the morning, you don't know what the day is going to bring, right? Especially, I work in a 100-bed facility. I am at the Elton, yes. Everybody knows the Elton. So the Elton is a 100-bed facility. We're almost full every day. Waterbury keeps us busy. So, it's a very ancient, building. It's an early 20th century building built in 1904. It was converted in 1980s to a senior living. So I have to say a little bit of a funny story. The other day, I had a public official from Waterbury stop by, and one of the first things that this gentleman needed to see was the bar downstairs, which was part of the hotel when it was originally opened. We talked about we found some vintage wine and stuff, but So, and the fire marshal also stopped by and was talking about all the experience that they had while growing up, coming to the Elton and, remember being a restaurant. So we still have the bar downstairs, but, I just want to make sure, disclaimer, that residents don't have access to that area. I just want to make sure, make a disclaimer that we're not, running a facility that promotes, alcoholism. So, yeah, right? I have a good support system in Waterbury. So while I really acknowledge that, I think a lot of frustration from people that other RCHs, the challenges that they experience, and I honestly, and like Regina stated, we have a lot of support systems in Waterbury. So I cannot, say that other people, have similar experiences because of the geographical privileges of where we are. We have access to services. But I was talking to Dan earlier about services. But one thing to keep in mind that every area still has an agency on aging that does provide support, that does provide resources, and you do have your ombudsman's office that you can reach out to for if you have questions. And while may not have the answers to all of them, right? And I just want to put a little bit of spin to my population of the residents that I have. Yes, I do have people who struggle with mental health issues. I do have people who struggle with addiction. Again, but that doesn't define them, right? I don't label them. The approach and engagement certainly does make a huge difference in dealing with these clients. I don't discriminate not taking somebody because of substance abuse issues, because one thing I know that I can get services for them because of where I am located geographically. So on a separate thing, I just want to make this also make a positive note that while there are a few residents who struggle, and we can all identify with those particular residents who disrupts the system, most of my residents are not that, does not fit into that, criteria of being disruptive. There are some people who are happy drunk. They do, come, and I what can I do? I mean, there's again, we're talking about the dignity of risk, right? There's only very limited things I can do, unless they're being disruptive to the community, which sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But for somebody who is coming from a nursing home, skilled nursing home industry, I had to have a paradigm shift in my perspective that, yes, we're in a social model. There's very limited things that I can control, in terms of what a resident can do and cannot do. So the biggest thing for me is, I looked at what is the definition of an RCH. The definition of a Connecticut definition of an RCH is a facility that furnishes food, shelter, laundry services. That part one. Classic old textbook of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the most basic foundational need of human needs, right? We check that box. We provide a safe, home-like environment for everybody. The second need of human needs, which is sense for safety. What is the second part of the definition of RCHs? Facilities that furnishes services that may provide assistance with personal needs, including bathing, dressing, and supervision of administration of medications. That checks off Maslow's second hierarchy of needs. We provide them with, maximizing their health and wellness, right? Now, the rest of the pyramids is where I, as an RCH, administrator in a 100-bed facility, that I often come across as very challenging. Like, I felt like I got to the base camp. Now going to the summit is going to be the hardest climb. That's where I feel like where we get the altitude sickness and fatigue and unpredictability and all that. The third stage is the human connection, right? We provide a platform for individuals in a congregate setting to have that positive connection, right? We have structured activities that we provide in our facilities. We do help residents connect with outside, like senior centers, other resources that may have available. In fact, we do have residents who volunteer in shelters, who give it back to the community, right? There are other options that, residents don't have, that's a beautiful thing about, I feel like, coming from a nursing home, making that change to an RCH, where I see people flourish. Because I was on the other end of not being able to discharge patients and not being able to find, because we have the number of residents who are waiting in nursing homes because of a housing issue, it's enormous. The magnitude issue, when you worked, Stacy, we worked in nursing homes. Stacy and I worked as a social worker before she was in ombudsman's role. How many times have we had residents who stay on MFP for how many years? 10 years? Yeah, for trying to find a placement, right? So, because people want to have that connection to the community, people want to, excel, and that's where I feel like in RCH we provide that opportunity for people to have that positive community connection, this positive synaptic connections in the community, right? Now, the fourth need, a human need, is what? The self-esteem, the freedom, the choices. That is the Maslow's, which is, I feel like, is tied into the whole entire resident rights by design is drawn from the Maslow's fourth hierarchy of needs. We provide residents the maximum amount of rights that I can find in a congregate setting. Residents have the right to self-determination. We talk about that. Right to choose their own providers, medical providers. Right to choose their nurse. Right to choose their mental health professionals. I'm looking at Karen. We have signed a contract with Harvest Health. We have other contracts with other behavioral health agencies that come in. So we give residents the option to choose and dictate who they want to partner with to be their medical team, right? So choices: right to self-determination, right to care and treatment, right to privacy. While I do have to admit, I do lock my doors at 10 o'clock at night because I've had come in the morning, 7 o'clock, I have a homeless individual who's struggling with housing, come to my facility and was sleeping in the lobby area. I know that when we talk about resident rights, there are certain things that I have to do is to protect my facility and my residents. And I think the biggest culture shock for a lot of people is, by the way, I'm not claiming in any way I'm an expert in RCHs, disclaimer right out there. So I think the whole HCBS compliance, I think that is pushing us into, rather from how I understand, rather from a social model to a medical model, I think we feel like we're a hybrid model in between. Because we do have residents who needs waiver services, who need medical services that if you're an HCBS compliance facility, you can receive those services in-house, right? It's almost like we're a hybrid facility. So when you're talking about residents, privacy, we do have, being HCBS compliant, I do have locked doors on all my residents' rooms. All 100 rooms are locked. They have their own keys. They can have visitation with anybody of their choice. And we do allow residents to have visitation of the people who they want to meet with, whether it be somebody in-house that they want to have a party in their room. Absolutely. We don't restrict in terms of their visitation rights. They have the right to receive their mail unopened. I do honor that.
I as well. I don't open none of my residents' mail either. And I, just jumping, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Right.
I have a resident that has a boyfriend that lives in New York. He comes over on the weekend. He usually comes after work, so he gets there like midnight. He comes into our facility and they spend time together. I don't restrict that because he's coming from New York, so I do let them have their time together.
Thank you. Yes, I do have similar individuals who, I have a woman that I took into the facility. Her boyfriend still lives in the community and couldn't qualify for a residential care home. So I do I do respect that, and I do, allow privacy during the visitation. I mean, at the end of the day, it's locked rooms. Residents have the right to have visitation with anybody of their choice. So the biggest thing that I feel, like I said, a lot of facilities, we are an HCBS compliant, facility, and we are able to provide the services, the hybrid services, I call it in my mind, because one thing, it really opens up opportunities for people who cannot receive services otherwise. A lot of residents, I do take a lot of residents from nursing homes. There are residents who wants to be discharged, but unfortunately they cannot because they cannot qualify for waiver services unless they are in an HCBS compliant, facility. So, and there are some times that there are challenges. I'm not saying the system is completely in any shape or form is perfect. I can perfectly tell you, I was working with Cynthia, one of the ombudsman, on it. One of the local access agencies was having a difficulty understanding what HCBS means and what an RCH can get services for. They thought it was a duplication of services to get a PCA in place. But we don't provide, necessarily PCA. Not every RCH, is able to provide, assistance with bathing, dressing, and toileting. That's a different level of care. So sometimes it is, it requires education, even for community partners. So, and having that opportunity to provide home for people who otherwise would be homeless. I feel like when I was initially talking to Barbara Cass about making a switch to residential care community, the first thing she said to me, Jane, was like, what RCH community does to Connecticut, it's unbelievable. The amount that we're solving a small piece of the housing crisis or the homelessness situation, but it's in the larger scheme, we're doing such a noble thing. Mm-hmm. So I just want to point out, amidst all the challenges and everything, ever-evolving challenges that we're being confronted with, we're doing an amazing things for a lot of residents in Connecticut. I feel like housing 100 residents, I feel like it's a great way of giving back and contributing to the state and taking care of its people. So I think it's always a dance, right? We talk about the dignity of risk. If we give residents the maximum right to make their own choices and be successful, they have the same amount or equal amount of right to fail.
Yes.
Right? It's understanding where our risk, our duties are as administrators, our RCH owners. Did we do our due diligence? Did we follow the process? Mm-hmm. And sometimes, we're not aware of all the processes, and that's why platforms such as this, there are things that I did not know. I came here with long-term care nursing home skilled nursing experience, read the state's operational manual, but there's a whole different aspect to how we do in RCHs. So it's understanding and getting educated on the process, I think, is the biggest key. And like I said, system is not perfect. I don't think system will ever be perfect, but I think this opportunity such as this has been a great resource for everybody. So I thank the Ombudsman's office for giving us the opportunity and giving us a platform to talk. Yes. So.
Yeah, so we've still got a little bit of time. Again, thank you guys so much for presenting today and talking about, again, some of the challenges, some of the successes that you guys have had in helping to manage more challenging residents in your setting. I don't know if you guys want, we can open the floor for a few more questions if we wanted to continue a dialogue on anything.
I just wanted to remind everyone, DEMIS, the Nursing Home Diversion Services Program, the nurses and us case managers will go out, and our training list keeps growing for the line staff, like Mental Health 101, all myriad resources for you guys. At least, if you have difficult clients, it's easy to say, get the resources, but, we can come out and assist you guys, and what is the email, Amy, please?
They're actually out on the table. I have the list of all the trainings that we do, and if you don't see one on there that you're interested in, we could make one. So feel free to take one of those and just let me know what you're looking for, and we'll figure out a time to come out and do a training.
Thank you, guys. And you guys have a wealth of experience, a long history, and Derek touched on that. Everyone might not have those same experiences or skills, and so That's why partnerships are so big and having the connections to the specialists who do. And so thank you for reminding us about the diversion nurses who can offer trainings like de-escalation and how staff can best help approach residents, using a person-centered approach to make sure that things don't escalate worse or sooner than they have to when working through some of these challenging issues.
Thank you. The HCBS, I did those little, 14 videos. I needed a break after watching those because some of the things, we're not an apartment. I know DPH will fight us on this and Ombudsman will fight us on this. They came to us because they needed assistance. They need assistance. They don't live independently in their own apartment. I'm not understanding, and I do have a meeting with the Ombudsman to come and maybe have some personal one-on-one clarifications before I run into those problems. It is always our goal to be 100% compliant. That's my goal. It always has been. I always tell all my staff it takes just as much effort to do it correctly that it does to do it wrong. So we want them to have their rights. We want all those things. But some of the things on the videos are like they can eat whenever they want. So that they give you all this information, but they don't follow through with who's paying for that. Who's paying for the food that they can eat whenever they want. Where is it stored? In our refrigerator, so the staff has to come and get it when they're doing their job. Do they get to use our microwave? Do they get to use our oven? Do they get to open and close the refrigerator? The fire marshal will tell you no. There's agencies that will come in. My workman's comp will tell me no because they could burn themselves. They could injure themselves in my kitchen. They could slip and fall. They could leave water. Who's cleaning up after all this 24-hour able to eat? Where are we paying for more refrigerators that they can have access to? Are they having a refrigerator in their bedroom? So they gave us these rules, but then they gave us no follow-through on who's funding all this food that they can eat 24 hours a day? Who's funding that? You guys couldn't provide coffee for us. I don't drink coffee. I don't care. But you couldn't provide coffee for us. It's shameful that I understand it's the federal government, but there's not a donut or a coffee out there. It's shameful. But yet we are supposed to allow these residents to have people sleep over. So the woman they met at the Dollar Tree is now their new love interest today, gets to come sleep over at our facility, at our electric, at our cleaning of the sheets, cleaning of the room, of using our toilets. But my staff can't eat an extra hamburger that we made 17 in case a couple fall on the floor, and they can't eat anything. But we're now supplying housing for possibly homeless people, possibly prostitutes, whether male or female, and we just have to let them do that because they have their rights. And we're not a flop house. I will not be a flop house. Some of these things I was just out of my mind. What they are able to do, are they able to come and go 24 hours a day? So is this a revolving door? So we have right now we've been open for over 30 years, and we have a curfew of 11 o'clock. And you can't go out and smoke until 6 a.m. So from 11 to 6 a.m., you don't go out and smoke. Just so it's not a 24-hour, the slamming of the doors, because if you allow them to smoke 24 hours a day, they're going to smoke 24 hours a day. And that's not comfortable for their roommate. That's not comfortable for everybody in the facility. So however much I want to abide by these HCBS rules, and God, I applaud you if you have 100 people and you're allowing people to sleep over. I don't know how you're managing
Let me clarify, not sleeping over.
Well, according to the HPCS, they can sleep over and they can have family members over for dinner. Are we supplying the food? Or are they have to bring their own meal? How is this working? Do we clean the dishes? Are they allowed? Do we have to supply spoons? Do we have to supply their creamer for the coffee? There's no follow through on any of those rules.
Yep. And happy to break it down. I mean, that sounded a bit more rhetorical. But happy to kind of discuss any and all of these issues, right? I think it's about following the spirit of the recommendation. Just like your person-centered support planning is not going to be the same. The way you approach specific residents isn't going to be the same for each person. Each facility is going to have their own policies about how they're going to address some of these issues. And we are at an important epoch now as we start to implement the home and community-based settings rule in our settings to make sure that individuals have access to supports while being mindful. We often say in the Ombudsman's office, and you raise some issues, when does one person's right end and another person's begin? What are residents' rights? And so all of these questions that you're raising, there is no definitive guidance that I would have to give you, because each facility is going to have to look at the specifics and see how they're going to address them. And I think that for us at the Ombudsman's Office, our perspective is that as long as we see reasonable efforts to accommodate these particular issues, you're following that spirit. I mean, some are pretty hard and fast. Residents have the right to come and go. You cannot physically.
I want to be clear. Coming and going is not HCBS. That has been, that is, that will be, that is their right. So I think I want to make sure we're not overlapping HCBS with what residents' rights are. The ability to come and go anytime, that is in place whether you're HCBS or not. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear. But there's some of these that are not as flexible.
Yeah, and these are common challenges that we've had historically. I was going to say, get her the mic. She's ready. And some of these are historical challenges that we've had long before HCBS compliance. Just because you didn't have the HCBS waiver or the HCBS services in place doesn't mean that a resident doesn't have the right to access food when they want. And so how is your facility addressing that? Many facilities address those in different ways. You know, is it that we plan, if a person likes ice cream at 10 o'clock at night every night, do we make sure that a staff is aware of that request so that even if the kitchen may be closing, that the ice cream can still be pulled and the resident still has access to it? And so there's a million ways that those things can be done. Right to privacy, right? I love the idea of giving them that opportunity. That sometimes comes into challenges with the roommate, right? And so a roommate has the right to privacy in a home-like environment as well. And so how can we work within the residents' rights to make sure that everybody is having their rights met? And so it is challenging, and I think that's kind of part of what we're doing here, is kind of working our way through some of these issues.
So I know we're not allowed to do a curfew, but are we allowed to lock our facilities by a certain time? Because we have an issue with outsiders coming into our house in the middle of the night because of these residents that are going in and out.
I do have, oh, I'm sorry. I do have somebody who watches the door, so they do open the doors for the residents. Somebody wants to come in at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night, they do. We just lock them just because we're downtown Waterbury. I have to be, cautious if I keep the doors open, but it doesn't, I do provide access 24/7.
And
Well, no,
I as
that's
well.
what we do as well, but I'm just saying to make sure it's okay, because I know we're not allowed to do curfews anymore. But we do lock the doors and, we do, as far as visitors, are we supposed to allow visitors until midnight? 24 hours. Even though we have one staff member on that takes care of that facility.
So I have one staff member on as well, and like I said, I do have one of my residents, she has a boyfriend that comes in on the weekend from New York. He comes at 12 midnight, and my staff let him in. I do have a doorbell, so I do lock my doors too, because of the area that I am in. So I have a doorbell that you can ring, that you can get in at any time.
And I encourage, as we come up with questions, like this is your opportunity to work with each other, meet each other, learn best practices and successes that you've had. I see a lot of you nodding because you've had these issues before. Some of you may not have your resolution yet. Some of you may have found one that works for your facility and your staff. So I encourage you to share some of the ways that you've worked around those issues while still understanding residents' rights, because you're right, it can be challenging.
And you actually, visiting hours should be a suggestion that you can't enforce them. That's just how it is. You cannot enforce visiting hours. They have the right to have people visit as they would like. Think about your own house, okay? When we talked about the food and things like this is their home. Once you rent it to someone, right? The state is paying or they're paying, you're renting it. They have the right. We talked about food. I don't get up and cook if people in my house want to eat dinner at 10 o'clock at night. They might have a bowl of cereal. They might eat some popcorn. They may order DoorDash, which happens a lot at my house. Like, who's at the door at 11 o'clock? And it's DoorDash that they pay for and they get. Fine. But think about it that way, the locking of the doors. I lock my house at night. I don't want people coming in my house, but I have unimpeded access, right? There's a key code to get into my house. The other people who live in my house know the key code or a fingerprint code. I know people get worried about keys. How do you access your home? And I get that this is different, but stepping back and looking at it that way might make it a little bit easier. And looking at your environment and how do we ensure that they're having, HCBS is about that experience, that their experience is a home-like setting. So what does that look like in your home? I don't know why you have them in place. That's a good question.
You know, it sounds like we're being very, very strong in this one, but I think that this is part of a broader culture within the home and respecting all residents' rights. Because while anyone has the right to participate in their love interests that they may have met at the Dollar Tree, and love happens at anywhere you can fall in love. You can fall in love anywhere. If there are concerns about health and safety, if there are concerns about visitation and the hours, right? I think it's a more nuanced conversation. When and how are we doing these visitors? How can we accommodate this visit without encroaching or causing challenge with other residents? Well, smoking crack is never allowed in the house. I can assure you, and if in private conversation, the ombudsman is never encouraging it. We, in fact, again, as part of the dialogues we have with residents, often, if they are facing, or maybe there are concerns that an involuntary discharge notice may be issued due to alleged crack cocaine usage in the room, we would inform the resident that that is a legal basis. In fact, you could get arrested for it, and we would encourage that they not participate in those activities. No, but no, yeah, we would let them know. Yeah, no one can participate.
That's an illegal substance. You should call it.
Yes, and that is, and that is a very, and I can understand your perspective because that is a very valid concern for a facility that has a population that may participate in those activities. We are not an arm of law enforcement. If there are concerns that individuals are participating in illicit activities, as a facility owner, you have an obligation to safeguard and protect the rights of all residents. You should be calling the police.
Yeah, that's an illegal substance. You should definitely be calling 911. It should be no issue. Yeah, I would. Yeah, that's definitely a police issue because it should not be happening. It's an illegal substance, and they should be taken out of your facility.
And we're talking
care home.
And we're talking about and again, these aren't necessarily challenges. We can certainly understand the challenges that come with running homes with individuals with long histories in areas that are afflicted by substance use disorder. Absolutely. But again, to some homes that may feel that we aren't fully informing residents of the risks associated with these informed choices, we certainly are. Any other questions?
It's really sad. It's really sad.
I think that, I'm a newbie at this, but I have been on the side of housing people for over 40 years myself. I will say that just like we teach our children, safety has to come first, responsibility has to come second, and then we follow that up with being respectful. And I think that if we have that and we model that and we're not always we will always be met with opposition that way. But if we're modeling it, I still say kindness is going to kill that behavior. Understanding is going to sit with that. I'm not saying they might not ever, like they say, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Once a crack addict, always a crack addict. Hey, it's just that it's in the person. I think we have to respect the person. We have to know who we're housing, try to know them the best that we know. And if we can't, we've got to work with them to get the next step. It's just our responsibility as a human is what I see.
Yep.
Yes, and I think like that terminology, how we're reaching people, where we're meeting them. I get that this is different. We've said this before. This is different. I know it's not easy. but taking the steps to be informed, to meet them where they are. Are things going to come up? Yes. You're still going to have the occasional case that comes up, the things that you're faced with. But the more skilled you get at this, and I was actually going to ask for our first speaker, if there's people who want to get trained, right, who want training in how to support individuals, can we get you guys information on that? You may want people in your homes to be trained in how to support people and where to get resources. There's a lot of good information out there. So I think that having the ability to do that is important. And as an industry, I really want to see you guys grow. I think it's an important part of our community to see more housing at this level and more support for individuals.
I'll just make a comment. Because I like talking. Why not?
Something else.
So I just think that we got to focus on some type of training, to support the folks that don't have the resources or the knowledge to run the places properly. Or I shouldn't say properly, that's not a good word to use, but to the standard that the state is looking for. Because I think that it's a slippery slope of what's going to end up transpiring to some of this stuff that's happening is that, I said this in the last time, is that people are going to start to really scrutinize the referrals based on them dealing with everything that she's dealing with over there. Is that she's going to now at some point just start to say, okay, let me look at who I'm admitting to these facilities, and it's going to start a crisis for the entire state, because if she stops accepting all those people, I don't know who's going to start accepting them. So that's we honestly to hear this, somebody needs to provide her as much support as possible, so that, because there's probably unfortunately I'm in Essex and I'm in Mystic. That's not going down there, okay? So we can't have crack being used in Essex and Mystic, okay? And Penny's not here, she's in Greenwich. So we have to figure out how to solve that particular issue and provide her with as much support as possible, so that, and that goes back to that CARF recommendation that I made before, is that I understand that it's an expensive thing to do, but it would provide her with some resources so that she could know how to navigate sort of all of these particular things. And then the last thing that I'll say, and it probably won't be the last thing, but the last thing is that one of the things that I think that folks have a hard time understanding is that there's so many people involved in this process that there's recommendations made, and I appreciate everything that your office does, but there's recommendations that are made sometimes that you don't know doesn't apply to another department, such as like the smoking thing, or the fire marshal says no. And so I find myself a lot of times where there are things being presented to say, yeah, you need to do this, but guess what? That's not allowable. As an example, the Mystic and Essex have specific health departments within the towns. Now, every town doesn't have this, but Mystic and Essex has their own specific health department that works for the town. And you have to be Serve Safe certified to even step into the kitchen. Yep. So you can't just say the resident can go downstairs and make their own meal, because in my town it's not allowed, because I got another person telling me that I can't do that. And so I think it's important for everybody to understand that, as well as that sometimes when the recommendation, and I don't think the recommendations are being made and maliciously that you're saying, oh, we want this to happen, but you're just not understanding how many facets are, in place that, yeah, this is, if you have a vehicle on the property, you have to have a driver's license and insurance, because Department of Motor Vehicles involved in that particular piece. And so just understanding that, I think, will help maybe some people in the room here too.
Derek always has 3 questions. Always. So the food part, we're not saying access to your kitchen. We are saying access to food. Okay, access to food, not access to your kitchen. So let me be clear on that. They have to have access to food. Put out an orange. Something like that. Another point you made about the education. We've heard you guys, right? That's why we're having these sessions. I've also heard that people want sessions beyond this, maybe twice a year, education and outreach. So we're going to look at doing that. How do we provide the support? And then for individuals, we're going to have, just like different settings have different supports, are good at some things, or maybe highlight other areas. I don't think everyone is going to be great at all of these things at once, right? But providing the education, like I said, getting certified in some things for different settings. We're going to have people that thrive in this, and they know that that's a home that can offer these supports. I already know sort of some of the key places of individuals, how they'll get supports, where they might be able to meet a person where they're at in some ways, and others that can't. So 1, we're going to continue the education twice a year. 2, Karsh, I think, would be a good place for people to get their questions to if they have issues and concerns and they want more information or they want education sessions on. So, Derek, that goes to you guys. And again, just, we're not saying access to your kitchen. And I'm going to go back to the fire thing again, because I say it all the time. We are not telling you to let people smoke in your bed, in their rooms, or whatever. Going outside to smoke, having access to a smoking area, that is DPH. And they will tell you, I'll guarantee you, Ray will tell you where they're supposed to go, how that's supposed to work. And they are the ones that look at, does the public health code meet your local people?
Mairead, I just want to interject with you, Mairead. I also feel that you should partner up, not partner up, but buddy up with other residential care homes. So me and David, I don't know why I keep calling you David. Why I keep calling you David? Oh, it's on my mind. Me and Derek, we are very close. We talk about everything, and now me and Jan is getting acquainted, and we're going to have each other's back. But if you buddy up with someone that has more experience than you have, that can also help you, because Derek has helped me a lot throughout a lot of the process. So find somebody that you can talk to.
So one of the other things, and this is I don't know, this is more like a state thing, and it's more so for this group over here, because I know the stuff that you deal with is, that Friday at 6 o'clock, the facility's being shut down, and now you got to figure out where all these 60 people are going. And that's crazy to me. But the other thing is that at other state agencies, like if you were a DDS provider, as an example, if you weren't meeting a certain standard for the Department of Developmental Services, they put you on what's called enhanced monitoring, enhanced contract monitoring. And they're on your behind big time, but they're also supportive. It's a collaborative approach too. But you're meeting with them on a regular basis to talk about and identify things of how you're correcting some of these issues. And so the challenge, I don't know, this is a state thing. I don't work for the state, but like it just seems to me as if there's going to be more of these situations that you're going to be dealing with where places are closing down, buildings are issues. You got the fire marshal Newfield Rest Home, the roof's leaking, and they got to all leave. And I just think that there's just not enough, I don't know, support or something. There's just not a lot of, like, it's almost like you guys work in a situation in which it's like, hold your breath and let's wait till an emergency happens. And then it's like, oh shit, this building's being shut down, and everybody's got to go run over there and figure out where all these people are going to go. But there's just no proactivity, or is that a word? Proactive approach to, kind of, because I'm listening to this over here and I'm like, I mean, if I was the ombudsman in Bridgeport, I'd be like, oh no, like this is serious over here. And this could be like a situation where, I don't know, but I don't know what I'm saying, but hopefully you hear what I'm saying. I don't know.
It's kind of like you queued up all the points today that I wanted to cover. So thanks, Derek. To that fact, so we have had a lot of emergencies, right? And how many of you gotten calls from us at late at night or middle of the day like, oh my God, help, right? So this is an issue. So I'm going to stand because I want you all to hear me and you want you to come. Next year, it's probably going to happen July or August, hopefully I'm going to be reaching out to you because we want a working group, because the legislature wants to hear back from us with ideas from the industry, right, on how to deal with emergencies. We don't work in your homes. So we are going to be planning some working groups later this summer into the fall with the state agencies, and then we want representation from the RCHs on how do we meet emergency need? What does that emergency response look like? What do you all agree to for each other, right? So it's not only us, it's all of you. So you just got yourself a ticket to that one. And if other people, if you're interested in it, I'm going to say let Karsh know. If you're interested in having those discussions and being a part of those working groups, I would really encourage you all to attend.
I think that would be nice to see what our needs are as well.
Yeah, so I do want you guys there, because we don't want to make something without you. And your lobbyists come, but I don't think they know exactly day to day what you guys are doing either, and the impacts and how the inner workings. So it's important that you guys are there as well. I think we are about done. I'm glad no more hands are up. All right, we will see you guys next month. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.